Today, we're going to jump in a time machine and trace an incredible thread of history all the way through ancient India. We're talking lost cities, sacred texts, and the rise of the subcontinent's very first empire.
But let's kick things off with a real mystery. I mean, what if I told you there was a civilization with huge, perfectly planned cities, underground plumbing, and trade routes that stretched for miles that just vanished? Its language, its culture, its secrets, all lost for thousands of years. It sounds like something out of a movie, but this really happened.
And that lost world has a name, the Harappan or Indus Valley Civilization. It's this absolutely incredible culture that, get this, nobody in the modern world even knew existed until archaeologists started digging up its ruins back in the 1920s.
And this timeline really puts it into perspective, right? We're talking over 4,000 years ago. This civilization was thriving at the same time as the ancient Egyptians and Mesopotamians. It hit its peak around 2500 BC, but then something happened. A slow decline began, and by 1750 BC, it was pretty much gone. Why? Well, that's a question historians are still debating today.
And we're not talking about a couple of small villages here. This thing was enormous. It stretched across what is now Pakistan and northwest India. Its biggest cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, were these super sophisticated urban centers, probably home to millions of people all across the region.
The things they were doing back then were just staggering. Their cities were built on grids, like modern cities, with houses made of uniform bricks, and they had the world's first known urban sewer systems. They were trading with places as far away as Mesopotamia, and they were the first people on Earth to figure out how to grow and spin cotton. But the biggest mystery of all? Their writing. We found it, but to this day, no one has been able to crack the code. So, after this incredible urban civilization fades away, the whole board is reset. The stage is set for a totally different kind of culture, with a whole new set of rules and traditions to rise up and shape the subcontinent. And just look at the contrast here. It's like night and day. Around 1500 BC, the Vedic culture starts to emerge. While the Indus Valley folks were city people, traders with a written script, these new people were nomadic herders, and for them, everything was about the spoken word, not the written one. Yeah, at the very heart of their culture was this idea called Shruti, which literally means that which is heard. All of their most sacred knowledge, their hymns, their rituals, their philosophy, wasn't written down for centuries. It was all memorized perfectly and passed down from teacher to student. It's an absolutely mind-blowing feat of memory. And all that spoken knowledge eventually got organized into 4 main collections, which we call the Vedas. The Rig Veda is the oldest and biggest, full of amazing hymns to their gods. The others deal with things like melodies for chanting, prayers for rituals, and even spells and charms for everyday life. These texts are literally the foundation of Hinduism.
It's also in this period that we see the first mentions of a social structure called the Varna system. In the Rig Veda, it's described as a society divided into 4 groups based on what people did. The Brahmins were the priests and teachers, the Kshatriyas were warriors and rulers, Vaishyas were the farmers and merchants, and Shudras were the laborers. Now, this idea would change a lot over time, eventually becoming a much more rigid and hereditary caste system.
Okay, so as Vedic society got bigger and more complicated, so did everything else. And whenever that happens, people start to ask questions, right? They start to wonder if there's a better way. And that questioning led to this incredible explosion of new spiritual ideas. You see, by the 6th century BC, a lot of people started to feel that the mainstream religion was becoming all about these super complex, really expensive rituals, and that the social hierarchy was getting way too strict. So they started looking for a more personal, a more direct path to enlightenment. And 2 of the most powerful movements to come out of this were Buddhism and Jainism. You had Gautama Buddha, who taught that the way to end all suffering was to let go of desire. That's at the core of his 4 noble truths. And you had Mahavira, who championed Jainism, focusing on the 3 jewels, with a huge emphasis on ahimsa, or absolute nonviolence to any living thing. So, at the exact same time that all of this deep spiritual thinking is going on, the political world of India was, to put it mildly, a total mess. The age of small tribes was over, and now you had these big, powerful kingdoms slugging it out for control. Just look at this. The whole subcontinent was basically a patchwork quilt of 16 major kingdoms, all constantly at war with each other. But one of them, a kingdom called Magadha, had a serious edge. It had rich land and lots of iron for weapons. It was poised to take over the whole shebang.
And the person who made it happen was Chandragupta Maurya. This guy was a total game changer. In 322 BC, he masterminded the overthrow of Magadha's ruling dynasty. And he didn't stop there. He went on this incredible campaign of conquest, uniting almost the entire subcontinent under one rule for the very first time. He created the mighty Mauryan Empire.
Now, the Mauryan Empire had some great rulers, but the story that really echoes through history, the one everyone remembers, is about Chandragupta's own grandson, an emperor named Ashoka.
For Ashoka, his entire life, his entire legacy, pivoted on a single year, 261 BC. That was the year he fought an absolutely savage war to conquer the last independent kingdom, Kalinga. His army won, but the victory was horrifying. The sheer amount of death and destruction completely broke him and sent him into a profound spiritual crisis.
He did a complete 180. He totally abandoned his old policy of Digvijaya, which means conquest by the sword, and he adopted a radical new idea, Dhamma Vijaya, or conquest by righteousness. Basically, he decided to rule not through fear and violence, but through morality and peace.
And he really meant it. He had his new philosophy carved into giant stone pillars and rocks all over the empire for everyone to read. In one of them he says, "All men are my children." Can you imagine a powerful emperor saying that? He wasn't their conqueror anymore. He was their father.
And this wasn't just talk. He put his new philosophy, his Dhamma, into practice. He banned needless animal sacrifices. He created special officials whose whole job was to teach people about morality. He even sent Buddhist missionaries to other countries, which is a huge reason Buddhism is a world religion today. And most importantly, he promoted tolerance for all beliefs.
Now, like every other great empire in history, the Mauryan Empire didn't last forever. It crumbled about 50 years after Ashoka died. But in the end, the physical empire he ruled wasn't nearly as important as the empire of ideas he built. His message of peace and compassionate leadership, that has lasted for thousands of years.
And that kind of leaves us with a big question to think about, doesn't it? The political empire that Ashoka built with force eventually fell apart, but his moral message of peace has endured. So it makes you wonder, can real, lasting power ever be built on anything other than violence and coercion? That's a question just as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. Thanks for tuning in.